So on this week's In Focus session, I wanted to talk to you about fears and dealing with your fears, facing up to your fears, leaning into your fears, because I think this is a really interesting topic because I've done a lot of sort of thinking around this topic for the past sort of week or so. It's been something that's on my mind. I've had various conversations with coaches. I'm always, thinking about fears in relation to my own coaching business to kind of what I want from life. I also had a conversation with my cousin, and her son is a little son. He's 9. Is in a mindset group for children, which I think is awesome. And they were talking about, sharing some content with the rest of the group that would really benefit everyone, that they think would really, be useful to people. And there's a lot of like young kind of footballer kids in there and sort of creative types. And one of the things that he said is like fear. Like he asked me if I got any videos or any podcasts that were sort of focused around fear, and it got me thinking like how even at such a young age, like fear is such a relevant thing to all of us. So I've kind of been doing like I said, a lot of thinking about this, a lot of digging on it, done some coaching on it as well recently, so it all ties in very well. And the thing that I really get from fear, right, is there's the classic acronym, right? FEAR, false evidence appearing real. And essentially what that is telling us is that our fears are literally only existing in our heads. Okay, they might seem and appear like they're very real in terms of the external world, but the fears that we have, they're only created in our own minds, because I can fear one thing and you can fear something completely different. Our fears won't necessarily be the same. So the external source is not necessarily the cause of the fear, right? It's our thinking around the fears that each of us have. So one of the things that is really interesting, right, is like me, I've spoken about this before. Like I've got a fear of the sea, right? And I don't really like to swim in the sea. I don't really like to swim in open water. It's not just the sea; it can be a lake. Because I'm always have a worry that I'm gonna get like eaten by a shark or like grabbed by a giant octopus or something that's in the water that you don't know is there. And this stops me from enjoying my time when I'm in at the beach, or to a certain degree anyway. When I'm at the beach or by a lake and when I swim in the water, I'm always got this sense of fear in my mind, and my thinking is the only thing that is creating that environment of the fear, because there's other people swimming in the waters, there's other people splashing around in the sea, and I think one of the things that's really been interesting to me is that understanding that the fears just hold us back, and the fears that we have and that we've created in our minds, they just restrain us, they constrict us to certain actions or behaviors, right? And the samurai, the ancient Japanese warriors, are very famous for because they're very good, but they're very famous for believing that they were going to die before they went into battle. And the reason that this was so good for them, like, sounds a bit weird. Like, why would you want to think that you're going to die when you're going into battle? Like, surely you wouldn't want to die. It's because they're trying to erase the fear from each of the warriors. Like, if you're carrying that fear of dying into battle, you're going to kind of tiptoe around a bit more. You're going to be sort of like poking around with your sword, like, oh, I don't want to get too involved in case I get hurt, I might die. Like, oh, stay away from me, don't come near me. But if you've eradicated that fear, if you've leaned into that fear and gone, do you know what, I'm going to die in this battle, so I'm going to give it my all anyway, all of a sudden you approach that with such a different freedom. You're like, all right, come at me then. Like, come at me with your swords. I'm going to do my best to fight you off. And they did. They won a lot of battles. They were very fearless warriors, which is what made them so great. And I think that's a really interesting take on like leaning into your fear and this idea of like what it actually means. And to me, it's like, we can go a level further than like my fear of the sea. We can take like a fear of failure, or a fear. So a fear that I have is like, I have a fear of not being seen to have the answers and say the right things. So here's an example. When I first started doing In Focus sessions on the podcast, I would part script them. Or I'd fully script some of them, and then I kind of read off the script. And that was because the fear to me was like, I don't want to be seen to be saying the wrong thing. I want to appear like I know what I'm talking about and I have the answers. But what that did is that just restricted me to literally the words that I'd written on that page. It didn't help me to be more free or to express something different while I was recording. It was very rigid, and I think that's a good word, rigid. It was very rigid in terms of what I'd already recorded and what I'd already written, so that I had no expression outside of that. And then when I started to kind of get beyond this fear and lean into it and really be like, okay, well, if the fear is that I don't come across like I've got the answers, then I'm just going to talk about what I know anyway. Because if I lean into the fear and I believe that anyone who listens to the Infocus sessions thinks that I don't know what I'm talking about, well, let me just talk about what I want to talk about then and see what comes out. And now my approach is to, okay, I'll think of a topic. It might be something that's been on my mind for like a day or two or even a week or so. And I'll just talk about it. I talk about the experiences. I talk about the things I've been thinking, the things that I've been reading. And the expression within each of these episodes is a lot freer, right? There's a lot more flow. There's a lot more freedom, expression. It comes across better in my opinion, right? And again, I don't care if you don't agree with that, because that's my opinion and I'm not here for that reason. I'm not here to give you the right answer or to appear like I have the right answers. I'm here to give you my learnings. So again, what I'm saying with that is like when you lean into the fear, it's like, okay, well, what if I believe that fear is going to come true anyway? Then I'm just going to enjoy what I'm doing. I'm going to have more freedom around it. Like, for me, again, going back to the swimming in the sea, next time I swim in the sea, and I've been getting better at this over time, don't get me wrong, I'm going to think, well, okay, well, why don't I believe that I am going to die in the sea today, that something's going to grab me or a shark's going to eat me? I'm just going to have fun then. I'm just going to enjoy being in the sea. If it's going to happen anyway, I might as well enjoy it, right? And it's taking that approach with fear of like facing up to them, leaning into a fear and going, do you know what? I see the fear, but let me lean into it. Let me be with the fear. Let me make the fear even more present so that it no longer restrains me. It no longer constricts me. It no longer brings this rigidness to the way I the way I act or behave. Well, there you go. Could be behacked. And it's like freeing yourself with an expression, freeing yourself with authenticity, with honesty, with openness, right? And that's what you're doing when you're leaning into the fear. You're not trying to push it away. You're not trying to get rid of the fear. You're not trying to fight the fear. Like all of these things, they sound really hard work, don't they? Like pushing it away, fighting it. Like, oh, that sounds exhausting. Why not lean into the fear and be with it? It sounds a lot more freeing to me. It sounds counterproductive, but it also sounds a lot more free. It sounds like actually, you know what? I no longer fear failure. You know what? I no longer have a fear of speaking in public. That's a good one. Public speaking, right? Loads of people have this. So if your biggest fear, using this as an example, if your biggest fear is speaking in public, imagine, the classic is like, imagine everyone's naked when you're speaking, right? To ease your nerves. Imagine that everyone who's in the audience thinks that what you're saying is nonsense. Then just say what you want to say anyway, because if they're going to think that it's nonsense, you might as well just be as true to yourself and as honest and as open as you can be with whatever that situation is, be it giving a presentation at work or speaking in front of a crowd or whatever it may be. Like, some people, even in interviews, they find really nervous. Well, if you just express yourself for who you are and you already, lean into that fear and think, do you know what? The worst is going to come of this already. Or, let me take the approach that the outcome is going to be as bad as it can possibly be. Then I'm just going to be more free. So I hope this is all making sense, because to me, it's like, when we do push our fears away, we just make them more real. We make them harder to then overcome, harder to deal with, harder to face up to them. But when we lean into those fears, they actually become less restraining, and we find more freedom around what those fears are. So I want you to, really mull and marinate on this idea. And I want you to let me know if you've been listening to this or you've been watching this, to let me know, like, what is your biggest fear? Like, what is one of your fears? Doesn't even have to be your biggest. What is one of your fears? And to do so, you can either drop a comment down below, or you can hit me up on Instagram at @IamAlexManzi, drop me a DM. Let me know, what is one of your biggest fears? I'd love to know what they are, and, to start to see if there's a way to lean into that fear for you. So I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, then it would be amazing if you could subscribe so that you can get more episodes like this straight to your phone. And even better still, if you can send this to someone who you think would really benefit from hearing this episode. Because at the end of the day, I started this podcast because I wanted to create a positive change, and you can really be a part of that by sharing this episode with somebody that you know today. Send them a screenshot and send them a personal message alongside it as well to let them know why you think it's going to benefit them. That's going to hold a lot more true and a lot more power for them also. So thank you for listening. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you for the next episode.